Port of Long Beach problems that we're allegedly fixing, that means that organic products are rotting on ships and they're not making it to port.
Welcome to Tommy Bites News, live at 5. That's how I feel after doing all this work, you guys. Because it's not easy. I get a lot of criticism about it. But I do thank you for supporting this channel. And I encourage you to share it out with others so that they too will know what's going on. And that we all can get prepared as prepared can be. That we grow our gardens. That we do the best we can with what we have. Hey, welcome back, family and friends. And if you have not joined, go ahead and subscribe to the channel because we would love to have you. Turn on your notifications so you'll know when I upload a video. So y'all know I've been digging in and digging hard. And I have been working on this for the past hour and a half, 2 hours or more, taking breaks in between because I am cooking. But on a serious note, I hope that you guys are aware of the shortages that's happening. I know you see my videos. I know you see other people's videos. I hope that you're actually seeing it and not just watching it. There is a difference because I have people that watch that still don't see it. And if you don't see it yet in your area, I hate to tell you, you will see it. Okay? Things are not expected to get any better anytime soon. So they are expected to probably go well into 2023. Not probably. It's going to go into 2023. The question is, can we turn this thing around and get it right and better before 2024? So this video, I apologize in advance. It probably will be a long video. I have been finding clips. So much has been going on. We're going to not make this a long intro. We're going to go ahead and jump right in. So this first article that I found is food processing plants and distribution centers are burning down. The FBI issues warning attributing these fires to cyber attacks. True or not, I'm about to read it to you. Some of it anyway. So some of these things will be me reading a little bit of the article to you, but I have so many clips and videos that I want to show you. So this says that as of today, this was the trending thing because a lot of people are starting to question what is going on. So in the last weeks, the U.S. has seen Taylor Farms, a packaged salad plant in Salinas, California, burned to a crisp. And Azure Standard Headquarters, the nation's premier independent distributor of organic and healthy food, also burned to the ground. So it also goes on to state that these are just two of the most recent ones, larger strings of fires burning down food factories, stores, and distribution centers. So first, I want to apologize for having to do this in my bedroom, but this is the only quiet place I could find to get this done. So the Economic Ninja he compiled a list of facilities since either 2019 or 2020 up until today that has had something happen to them. So I'm going to read that list of places off because I did not even know about the majority of these places. Made Right Steak Company in Pennsylvania, food processing plant in San Antonio, Texas, Cargill Nutrina in Los Angeles, California, Van Druin in Illinois, a potato plant in Maine, a potato plant in Washington State, Harper's Market in Ontario, Canada, Mauston Meat Processing Plant in Wisconsin, Bonanza Meat Company in El Paso, Texas, Schroer's Food in Oregon, Nestite Hot Pockets plant in Arkansas, Walmart Distribution Center in Indiana, Walmart Storefront Edgewood, New Mexico, Walmart Storefront Clarks County, Las Vegas, Nevada, a fertilizer plant in Kansas, a plane crash near General Mills cereal plant in Georgia, Plane crash into Gem State potato processing facility in Idaho. East Conway beef and pork butcher shop and meat market in Maine. Industrial food preparation and processing facility in Quebec, Canada. Maricopa food pantry in Arizona. Paddock meat production company in Georgia. River Valley ingredients plant in Alabama. So again, I'm not going to read that full article, but the Economic Ninja did quote, "I believe there is a squeeze coming this year that is going to be intense and is going to put people in a position where they are hungry, they're scared, and they're angry. We're going to have rising inflation and food shortages. The food shortages are going to exacerbate the inflation," end quote. So with all the accidents or non-accidents that are happening, however you want to look at it, conspiracy theory or not, because I'm side-eyeing, what is going on. Things I'm going to cover in this video is going to be farmers dumping and destroying their food or dumping their milk. And I'm going all the way back, y'all, to 2020 up until now. But nothing's going to be in order. We're going to talk about shortages with school lunches. We're also going to talk about, well, you're going to see videos on these things. The Taylor Farm fire, the PepsiCo fire. I don't even think I named that in one of the things that I was naming. I didn't even know that had happened. We're going to talk about port delays, shipping container problems. So I'm not going to get into the lockdowns that's going on in China, Shanghai, and Beijing, but you do know that those things will affect us, especially with the port in Shanghai. We're going to talk, you're going to see videos about evacuations when they had to evacuate when they had the fire at the fertilizer plant in North Carolina. We have to be prepared at a moment's notice to leave our homes if we have to, because they are putting these facilities in neighborhoods or near neighborhoods. You're going to see videos of what they thought was going to happen, which is why they created the evacuation. I have a video on that to show you what that looks like because it happened in Beirut. So enough of me talking right now. Let's get to these clips. Leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Do you think it's a coincidence? Do you think that this is happening for a reason? Are they attacking our food supply? Are they trying to control us with food? Are they trying to control the masses? Do you think that the government is not preparing for these food shortages? They are. They really, really are. And we're going to get into, we had the president say food shortages are going to be real. And how is it going to affect us? I hope that I can answer all of those things in this video. So please stay tuned. Share this video out. Hit that like button. Turn on your notifications, you guys. Let's get this video out to everybody. And the best way to do that is to hit the like.
So just moments before we went to air tonight, a plane apparently crashed at a General Mills plant, a food plant in Covington, Georgia. 6 tractor trailers were reportedly on fire. You're seeing pictures from the scene right now. This is the second time in a week that something like this has happened. On April 14th, the plane crashed into the Gem State processing in East Idaho. What's going on here? Well, the story gets weirder. Food processing plants all over the country seem to be catching fire. A couple of days ago, a fire destroyed the headquarters of Azure Standard, one of the largest organic food distributors in the country. At the end of last month, a fire severely damaged a fresh onion packing facility in South Texas. In Oregon, a potato chip processing plant just reported a boiler explosion that sent workers to the hospital. Here's a news report on that.
Eastern Oregon, where crews are battling a major fire at a potato chip processing plant. Air 12 flew over the scene at Shearer's Foods on Highway 207 in Hermiston. We're told the fire was caused by an explosion of a portable boiler there. 2 people were taken to the hospital.
So industrial accidents happen, of course, but this is a lot of industrial accidents at food processing facilities at the same time the president's warning us about food shortages. They're getting hit by planes and catching fire. What is going on here exactly? Jason Rance hosts a radio show in Seattle and joins us to put it into perspective. Jason, good to see you.
Good to see you. Yeah, obviously, when something happens every so often, you obviously hope that there's no significant damage and certainly no one gets hurt, but you kind of write it off. It's not that big of a deal. Accidents happen. But when you've got well over a dozen food processing plants and warehouses getting destroyed or seriously damaged over just the last few weeks, at a time when the food supply is already vulnerable, it's obviously suspicious, and it could lead to serious food shortages. That's why some folks are now wondering, well, number one, what's going on? And you've got some people speculating that this might be an intentional way to disrupt the food supply.
Wait, may I ask you to pause there really quick? Can I just ask you, I just want to nail this down so our viewers understand. There have been confirmed over a dozen disabling accidents at food plants in the last month, over a dozen.
Absolutely, and we're talking about some really significant plants. The Taylor Farms facility in Salinas, California was completely destroyed by a fire last week. We've had two major potato processing plants in Belfast, Maine and Warden, Washington that were completely gutted, which is happening at a time where we already have a potato shortage globally. You were talking about the onion supply at that Rio Fresh, but it's not just produce plants. Last month there was a fire that took out a Nestle food plant out in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and that's impacting frozen food brands like Hot Pockets or Stouffer's, which maybe you might buy if you can't get fresh food from a warehouse that just exploded. And that Shearer's food facility you just mentioned in the open, I mean, that's the only West Coast facility that they operate. So there is some significant concern, of course, that this is going to impact the supply chain. Now, to be clear, the timing is very suspicious. It's obviously concerning. Police are saying that these fires are due to faulty issues with equipment, so they're not saying that this was intentional. Either way, it's obviously going to have some significant, implications in us getting our food.
Yeah, I mean, an hour ago, a plane crashed into a General Mills facility. We'd already planned this segment. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The onus is on people who think that's a conspiracy theory to explain what is going on. What are the odds of that? I have no idea. Jason Rantz, I appreciate your report tonight. We will follow up.
Thanks, Tucker.
The coronavirus continues to test the food supply chain in America. Farmers are facing agonizing decisions, from euthanizing livestock to tossing crops. No different at Marshman Farms in upstate New York.
I remember my husband was in the house, and his brother actually had called and said, hey, there's no place for this milk to go. It has to get dumped. And it created a bit of a silence, because never had that happened.
Never in 7 generations on this dairy farm. About 7,000 gallons of milk down the drain. With restaurants, schools, and businesses closed, the supply chain severed.
We have a responsibility to feed the world. And you know that things are bad when you can't do that.
Just one family?
This at a time when the need for food assistance is exploding across the country.
We know that the farmers didn't want to dump all that milk, so it was really upsetting for everybody.
5 million pounds of green beans that we have destroyed, 8 million pounds of cabbage that we've destroyed. We have to grind it up back into the ground. That's the only choice we have, and hope for a better day.
Paul Allen isn't alone. Farmers across the country are destroying millions of pounds of fresh produce, as the coronavirus has majorly disrupted the food supply chain. Initially, consumers hoarded items like rice, beans, and frozen foods. The panic buying resulted in empty aisles, and some wondered if the U.S. was in danger of a food shortage.
So it was in the middle of March when they shut down all of the restaurants, and then all the theme parks shut down, cruise lines shut down.
In a matter of days, many farms lost the majority, if not their entire market channel.
Before the crisis, over half of Americans' food dollars were spent outside the home, at restaurants and other food service locations. The coronavirus immediately changed that, but the farmers had already planted their crops. So now they're destroying them, plowing cabbage, lettuce, and other fresh produce intended for restaurants and schools straight back into the ground.
Yeah, I'd say 25% of the crop that's grown in our industry is probably not being able to make it to either retail or food service. Probably the most trying time that we've probably ever had since the Great Depression here in the Salinas Valley and farming.
While restaurants and schools are closed, this doesn't mean that we're eating any less. We're just getting more of our food from grocery stores. So why are farmers still destroying their crops?
The supply and demand in an overall sense is exactly the same. The challenge is how we're getting that food, where we're getting that food, and in some cases, what types of food we're getting.
Basically, farmers are up against an inflexible food supply chain, which is specialized for the end customer. Long-standing contracts between farmers, restaurants, schools, and grocery stores determine how the crops will be packaged and processed. So it's just not easy to divert all the produce intended for restaurants to grocery stores instead.
You're really designing your farm to fit whatever specific sales outlet you have. The system just isn't set up to be that nimble.
A quarter of all food consumed and over half of all food dollars go to the food service sector. So many operations are designed specifically with restaurants in mind.
Most of the volume sizes per unit are larger, where you might get a 12-ounce bag of veggies in a supermarket. Most of the food service stuff is like in 10-pound bags.
It's not easy to switch those factories, the packaging in those factories, from restaurant or commercial to consumer.
I'm Molly Grantham. Take a good look at this picture one mom in Gaston County sent us from Cramerton Middle School. She says the portions of lunch food her child is getting have been cut in half. Our Brandon Hamilton is in Gaston County tonight. And Brandon, you spoke with this mom who says she's not alone. And she also said she's not trying to rip the school district, that she wants Brandon to be part of the solution.
Yes, Molly, this mom tells me her daughter says that sometimes at her school there is not enough food to last all lunch periods. And if there is enough food when it gets to her final lunch period, the options are limited. Ashley Jackson has 2 kids in Gaston County schools. Throughout the pandemic, like all parents, she's had to deal with changes. But her child getting served this, and only this, she says, was one she didn't expect.
A scoop of macaroni and cheese and a roll. I've heard someone, a high school kid got 4 chicken nuggets and a roll. Very limited options, and just not enough to get these kids through a 7-hour school day.
Jackson went to social media, and the comments started pouring in from parents at different schools. One mom said her son, quote, had a smaller plate and didn't have much on it. Another parent posted her child had told her the same thing. Jackson also found out from her 8th grade daughter this has been going on, she says, for weeks.
This is crazy. First of all, the school has not said anything. The district has not said anything. We're not notified at all. I mean, I'm sure most parents, if we knew the situation, we would be making sure our kids packed a lunch for the day. And, I'm more than willing to do that for my child and any other child I can help.
Jackson says she doesn't blame the district, workers, or the schools for, as she says, portions being cut. She says parents understand supply chain issues are to blame, but they want communication to be part of a solution.
Well, recent reports say schools all over the country face food supply issues for breakfast and lunch.
News 13's Lacey Lee spoke with a local food service specialist about their plans to tackle this big problem.
The food service specialist that I spoke with says the food and supply provider challenges lie in labor costs, product costs, and just meeting the need at this time. But fortunately, they found ways to work around it.
So many of the manufacturers that provide us with those products, because of their labor force and the challenges they're facing, they have to shut production down.
Valerie Mouzon, the district's food service supervisor, said they are experiencing shortages in breaded chicken, paper supply, and short staff. With school around the corner and students needing their lunch, they are facing challenges, but that's not going to stop them from providing kids with the nourishment they need.
Plane exploded on impact right outside the General Mills plant in Covington. Nobody on board survived. There were people working inside when it happened. An 11 Alive viewer shared this chilling video from the moments after the crash.
And Cheryl, police did not say how many people were on the plane, but have said they know at least 2 people died. Here's some video from last night from a much more active scene. Police say the plane went down yesterday around 6:45. It crashed near the General Mills plant in Covington. Police say witnesses saw the plane veer right and then come straight down. We're told the plane was traveling from the Covington airport before it crashed into what looked like some tractor trailers. Police say there were no injuries, though.
You just heard that call for help from a 911 dispatcher after a plane crashed near the General Mills plant in Newton County. And officials tell the 11 Alive just a couple hours ago there are no survivors.
Emergency evacuations tonight with a massive fire burning at a fertilizer plant in North Carolina. Thousands forced from their homes, firefighters pulling back as well, amid concerns a significant explosion could still be possible. They want this fire to burn itself out, but they also want it to burn at a certain temperature to avoid any blast. Victor Akendo on the scene in North Carolina.
Tonight in North Carolina, thousands of evacuees are wondering when they'll be able to return home. The fire at this Winston-Salem fertilizer plant now burning for 24 hours.
I had an alert on my phone telling us to evacuate, so I just packed up everything and no questions asked, I'm just getting out of here.
The 600 tons of ammonium nitrate on site fueling fears of a catastrophic explosion. Overnight, firefighters ordering residents within a 1-mile radius to leave immediately.
If it explodes, it'll level 1-mile radius. Please exit the area.
Evacuating themselves, too. Tonight, authorities hoping that they're able to keep the fire burning cool enough to avoid a potential blast and that the inferno burns itself out.
Things so far have gone well, but we are not anywhere near being out of the woods.
In 2013, a fire and explosion at a Texas fertilizer facility storing a fraction of the amount of ammonium nitrate killed 15. The ATF ruling that fire was intentionally set.
We're outside that 1-mile radius. Tonight, the plant says all of its workers are safe. The cause of the fire is under investigation. There was also a hazmat team here on the ground monitoring the air quality. They say so far it is not toxic.
This is what they feared would happen in the North Carolina fertilizer fire. That's why they did the evacuation as fast
as they did. Seeing, and what is it going to take for it to ease?
Yeah, and so you are seeing over 70 container ships still waiting right now at the port of Long Beach, but that's not the whole story. There's actually over 130 container ships waiting at U.S. ports. So the East Coast has some traffic congestion. Seattle, you're seeing similar things. And actually, it's even worse than that. If you go over to China, you'll see even more container ships, 90 waiting in Shanghai. What it means is that we estimate around 20% of all the container ships on the Pacific Ocean right now are just sitting there waiting, idle, unable to unload. What that means is massive delays. I think a lot of companies are going to miss Christmas season. Their cargo is just sitting there in the water. Very high prices because, of course, if you reduce the supply of shipping, that leads to really high prices. And it's just kind of a mess. I think businesses are really going to struggle with this.
A giant container ship wedged from bank to bank, blocking one of the world's most important shipping lanes. The 400-metre-long Ever Given got stuck on Tuesday morning, running aground in high winds, reportedly after a power failure on board. A fleet of tugboats has been trying to refloat the megaship ever since, while a digger, tiny by comparison, tries to extricate her bow from the eastern bank.
Ship that took a wrong turn and has been stuck in shallow waters near Maryland for 3 weeks. Efforts to free the ship and its cargo of 5,000 shipping containers. All those attempts have failed. Kenneth Moten is live on the scene with more for us. Good morning, Kenneth.
Good morning, Robin. This is about as close as we can get to this massive ship stuck in the Chesapeake Bay. Take a look from the air. The U.S. Coast Guard has a 500-yard safety zone around this ship as crews work to get it out of here. For 3 weeks, as you mentioned, crews have been using tugboats, even digging, but the ship just won't budge.
This morning, that massive cargo ship called the Everforward, going anywhere but, trapped in the Chesapeake Bay for 24 days. The nearly 1,100-foot ship carrying 5,000 containers ran aground leaving Baltimore, where it remains stuck just outside one of the busiest ports in the world.
How big of a deal is this?
It's a big deal. This is a big ship. This is one of the largest container ships in the world, and it's 1,100 feet long. It's the length of 3 football fields end to end.
Captain John Martino of the Annapolis School of Seamanship showing us how the 130,000-ton ship missed its turn down the channel, landing in water 24 feet deep. It needs 42 feet of water to stay afloat.
She was moving when she went aground, and she dug a trench.
The vessel's company, Evergreen Marine Corporation, just happens to own the megaship that also ran aground in the Suez Canal a year ago, blocking $10 billion in goods daily for nearly a week.
The Everford not blocking this critical channel in Maryland, but the U.S. Coast Guard concerned about safety and monitoring for fuel leaks. The ship's company is now invoking an old maritime law that requires those with cargo aboard to help pay the cost to free it.
What that means is basically a lot more paperwork, and everything has to be settled with the insurers until they actually release the cargo.
Meanwhile, on shore, the stuck vessel, somewhat of a tourist attraction.
It's definitely a lot bigger than we thought and than we anticipated.
And this morning we've learned of a new strategy. The U.S. Coast Guard says crews will start taking these containers off one by one to help refloat this boat. Those containers will be put on barges and taken back to Baltimore, a tedious process that's expected to take at least 2 weeks. Guys, I can tell you that this incident is still under investigation.
Top story is, of course, the Taylor Farms processing facility in Salinas, which burned overnight. It is now considered a total loss after that monster fire ripped through the building last night. Here is a live look from Skycam 8 Salinas from our KSPW 8 studios right now. This is looking toward the Taylor Farms facility on Abbott Street. And you can see there still is a little bit of smoke that is still coming from the facility. Crews are on scene monitoring the situation as we speak. And new tonight, these photos taken from a drone showing just how major this fire was.
This breaking news in Monterey County, a huge fire at a veggie processing plant. And there is still the possibility at this hour that they're going to have to close down 101 in both directions there in the Salinas Valley. The fire is just huge. Firefighters had to pull back because of the level of dangerous smoke coming off of that building, as well as the possibility of ammonia exposure. So they're monitoring the fire right now with drones. This is at Taylor Farms in South Salinas. The surrounding neighborhood evacuated, and for several miles in each direction, a shelter-in-place order is in effect that includes Salinas Valley Memorial Hospital and 4 elementary schools, which will be closed today. We've already heard several propane tanks blowing up there, but again, the real concern is the exposure to hazardous ammonia in some of the smoke.
Happening right now in Piscataway, Middlesex County, and wow, there you have it. That is a rather substantial fire. It's happening in what looks like a factory. Let's get more details from Shannon Sohn in Newscopter 7. Shannon.
Yeah, this is burning at the PepsiCo facility here on New Brunswick Avenue at Lakeview Avenue. Now, initial reports are just starting to come in that there may be propane tanks that exploded here, but you can see whatever started this fire, it looks like it started in some of the containers located outside of the building, and it has quickly spread to the building. You can see the Pepsi trucks on the left side of your picture, but what we really want to do here is bring this picture out because this fire started less than 20 minutes ago, and we were as far as 30 miles away, and you can see the smoke and even the flames into the air. You can see here off of Lakeview Avenue that the fire department is just starting to respond to this. They don't even have any water on it yet. So a massive fire here. We're going to bring you back to the fire itself because these flames are licking up 20, 30, 40 feet in the air at this point. Again, firefighters just arriving on the scene, and even looks like some of the embers are coming off and burning into the brush off to the side, but this whole facility is in danger of going up in flames. Again, initial reports are that there are propane tanks that are exploding here, but obviously fire department is not even here yet. And we showed you those Pepsi trucks at the beginning. Now you can see that they are all smoking now as well with these embers coming off of this fire. This has the potential to get very bad before it gets any better.
In Maine, people living near a burnt-out potato processing plant were urged to stay in their homes and close their windows. The Penobscot Micrum plant in Belfast, Maine, caught fire early this morning. There are ammonia tanks inside the facility, and while it does not appear that the flames threatened them, firefighters were understandably concerned, but no reports of any injuries so far.
Breaking news in eastern Oregon, where crews are battling a major fire at a potato chip processing plant. Air 12 flew over the scene at Shearer's Foods on Highway 207 in Hermiston. We're told the fire was caused by an explosion of a portable boiler there. 2 people were taken to the hospital. It's unclear how badly they were hurt. There are no evacuation orders in place, but people have been told to be ready to evacuate due to air quality issues as a result of all that smoke.
Some store shelves empty of milk, yet we've seen video of farmers dumping it. We set out to find out why. With Wisconsin already bleeding dairy farms, bad just became worse. Facebook photos of Wisconsin milk being dumped in manure pits or flushed down the drain. But how could it be when some dairy cases in the Twin Cities are empty?
Nobody wants to dump milk.
Marty Halleck milks cows near Mondovi, Wisconsin, and serves on the board of the Ellsworth Cooperative Creamery.
Probably the biggest challenge is how rapidly this change came.
Almost instantly, demand shifted from cheese, primarily sold in now shuttered restaurants, to bottled milk being guzzled in stay-at-home households. A Wisconsin dairy disaster.
In the state of Wisconsin, about 90% of the milk is made into cheese, 10% is fluid.
Cheese plants, like Ellsworth, aren't set up to bottle milk. And bottling plants, like this one run by Kemp's in Minneapolis, only have capacity to bottle so much.
Somewhere there's a line that made them little butter patties that's sitting empty right now.
Because they went to restaurants.
They went to restaurants.
Ellsworth Creamery, the Minnesota State Fair supplier of curds, is working overtime turning milk into stored cheese. Still, it sent out this letter urging its farmers to cut production through cow sales and feeding changes and offering financial incentives to dairymen who quit. All meant to stave off milk dumping.
It's heartbreaking.
Major events going on around the world that are putting pressure on global food supplies and sending prices sharply higher. It really is. How bad is it?
It's pretty bad because many have never seen food prices this high in their lifetime. In February alone, the UN's food price index soared 13% in February. That's the highest level since the index's inception back in 1990. We know Russia's invasion of Ukraine is largely to blame, but there are numerous black swan or unpredictable events plaguing your dinner plate. Let's start, for example, with hog disease. There was a hog disease outbreak that is shrinking herds in Mexico, forcing Mexico to turn to U.S. pork supplies, and that's driving prices higher. January and February alone, exports to Mexico climbed 33% year over year. And then you've got lean hog futures that have climbed over 20% just this year alone. All while farmers are shrinking herds because animals are just getting way too expensive to feed right now. And that's because you've got a surge in grain and fertilizer prices related, of course, to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and that have hit meat producers like Tyson Food and JBS. You got BMO and Barclays that are both holding the chicken, downgrading Tyson right now. And then you've got bird flu that's sweeping the nation, forcing American farmers to kill millions of hens and slashing the supply of eggs, driving weekly prices up 44% compared to last year. And keep in mind, the Easter holiday further adds to the demand, and that's just around the corner. You've got upswings in prices that have helped egg producers like Cal-Maine not only produce positive cash flow, but offset prior losses and allow the board to declare a dividend. And then, you feeling a little thirsty right now? The U.S. Department of Agriculture said this year's citrus crop was expected to be the smallest in more than 50 years. Frozen OJ prices were up 17% in February compared to last year. And that's because of an invasive insect disease that damaged Florida orange groves, sending OJ futures also up 16% this year. And you think these prices are bad? According to the USDA, they're warning that it's only going to get worse as some companies move on to 2 and 3 rounds of price hikes, unfortunately.
Fertilizer prices have hit record highs, driven by supply shortages caused by the Ukraine-Russia war, along with a host of pre-existing factors.
It's a challenge for all of U.S. agriculture right now. For farmers who are just walking in to buy fertilizer today, they're twice as expensive as they would have been last August, close to 3 times as costly as they would have been in early 2021.
Fertilizer is typically among farmers' biggest expenses each year, and the rising costs are creating cascading impacts for farmer incomes, crop yields, and food prices.
Broadly speaking, that is a big concern for food production, and if other parts of the world can't get their fertilizer in, then it becomes what some CEOs have warned as a global food crisis.
So what's driving these surging fertilizer prices? And what does that mean for farmers and your grocery bills? Like many products and services during the pandemic, fertilizer prices have been impacted by global supply chain challenges.
There's a lot of elements that go into manufacturing fertilizer, and how it's produced. It requires different ingredients and natural gas from all different parts of the world. If one of those things is disrupted, it throws off the entire supply chain for how fertilizer is produced.
There are several key factors behind the global fertilizer supply crunch driving high prices. First, various trade restrictions in 2021 led to a steep drop-off in fertilizer exports. In December, the US and European Union imposed sanctions on Belarus. This halted exports of potash, a key ingredient in mineral fertilizers. Belarus is the world's third largest potash provider.
In the soybean field in southern Brazil, analysts warn higher prices means less production of essential crops. Farmers are also struggling in Kenya. Up until recently, fertilizing the entire.
If you're wondering why a war between Russia and the Ukraine would cause a worldwide food shortage, just look at the bread on your table.
So talk about food shortages. And it's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well. And because both Russia and Ukraine have been the breadbasket of Europe in terms of wheat, for example, just to give you one example.
But to this means stock up now.
Let's see how we can prepare for what President Joe Biden says may come to America.
What is produced in Ukraine and Russia that would have such an impact on us?
Well, we know that Russia and Ukraine are the first and fifth producers of wheat. Ukraine is one of the world's largest exporters of sunflower seed oil, which is used not only in cooking, but for health remedies in places like China. And there's a finite supply of each of these things. And so with natural products, we've spoken before on your program about the idea of lumber prices and how when the U.S. lumber supply is limited, we rely on our number one export or import partner, Canada, to fill in any of those gaps. Well, Canada was experiencing a problem with beetles, and so they were unable to create that stopgap measure or redundancy for the U.S. production markets. And these are organic products, so they don't just produce on a printer or in a production line where you can increase the number of hours of workers. There's a natural cycle to crop production and agricultural products. And so when we think about Ukraine and Russia being taken out of the market, Russia with sanctions, Ukraine with invasion and conflict, then we realize that this puts an additional strain on the global demand. And so those people seeking sunflower seed oil for health are going to be competing with those people seeking sunflower seed oil for food purposes. Those people seeking wheat for production of bread or flours are going to be in competition for those people running ranches who need that grain for their cows or other products, right? So Ukraine is known as the world's breadbasket, right? That region has a nickname associated with its agricultural production, and all of that is being interrupted. And Russia, which is another large exporter of these grain products, now we've got sanctions on them, and we're legally not allowing ourselves to accept their products.
Now, have we seen a slowdown as of yet as far as wheat coming out of Russia and Ukraine as a result of the war? Have we actually seen it yet?
We've seen it, but we haven't felt it to the degree that it's going to happen. Much like fuel, there are production delays to the demand point, right? So upstream and downstream, as we move through that flow, we're going to see more of this compressed scarcity causing shortages and increased prices over the next coming weeks until we're able to facilitate some sort of stopgap measure. Unfortunately, unlike oil, where perhaps we can partner with Iran or Venezuela and create legal or policy solutions to scarcity caused by this conflict in Ukraine, agriculture, again, is an organic product and it grows in its own time. So we're not going to be able to grow wheat in Saharan Africa just because we need it to grow there. We're not going to be able to grow it in inclement environments just because of our demand. So it's going to create a problem. We know in Texas that we had the freeze last year. We are still experiencing those problems even in 2022 with regard to production sort of surplus. And so we don't really have backups. That means that any delays in shipping, any of these Port of Long Beach problems that we're allegedly fixing, that means that organic products are rotting on ships and they're not making it to port. And then we further compound the damage and potential issues of food access.
And of course, we can't stockpile bread, you know.
Right.
It'll go bad in about a week or so.
And this is where he's wrong because you
in
can.
Texas, we put our bread in the refrigerator, right? Yankees might not do that, but we know that mold is a very real problem. And so these shelf life issues, again, compounded with or at the confluence of production issues, Russia and Ukraine creating that top 5 in our exports of wheat, corn, and other grains. It's not just used in our bread. It's not just used in our cereal, our Lucky Charms. It's also something that farmers use to feed their animals. So we've got a lot of competing consumers with not a lot of diversity of supply.
And a lot of people ask, why should I care? That's why you should care. It's right on your dinner table.